What is a Heisenburg question? Werner Heisenberg was a German physicist who became a Nobel laureate in the early 1930s. And his principle states the observer affects the outcome of an experiment. And what this means is in physics is that if they're looking for something, let's say they call it a quark, when they do the physical experiment, they're actually able to see things. And if they're looking for something else, they may change the observation of the experiment. We see this in medicine today when they do a clinical trial, when it's called a double-blind study. When we do a double-blind study, what that means is that the person administering the drug to you as the person in the study doesn't know if it's a placebo or if it's a real thing. If the person administering the drug knows that you're getting a placebo and the other person's getting the actual drug, the fact that they know about it affects the outcome of the experiment, and they will perform equally in that thing. So the person that gets the placebo won't have any beneficial effects, and the person that's receiving the drug will have beneficial effects. Now, what they found is that if the person administering it doesn't know if they're giving the placebo or the real thing, then they get a much more accurate result of if the drug is actually working or if it's just a placebo effect that's working. And we can see the same thing in some experiments that were done in schools where they took two groups of children and they put them in randomly in two different classrooms. And one teacher in one classroom, they said, "You have all the smart kids," and the kid in the back who was the most disruptive kid in the class, they said, "And little Johnny in the back, he's the most intelligent kid in the group, and he's always bored. So you really have to pay attention to him because he's so smart that he's just outperforming everyone else." At the end of the year, they compared the two groups that were identical when they started. Came out that the kids where the teacher was told they were the genius kids, they all performed at a genius level. So the observer in that case, the teacher, affected the outcome of the experiment, which was to teach the kids, and that now they all performed at a genius level instead of the average level, which the other class performed at. So when we look at the Heisenburg question that he we're talking about, we say there's kind of a Heisenberg corollary that states asking the question causes a person to self-reflect on an area which they don't want to look at. Okay, so it's the same kind of thing. If I ask the question, I'm going to affect the outcome of the answer. And this comes in usually when a person's in a state of denial. You ask a question and all of a sudden the person reacts in a very, very illogical way where they're very emotional and they're argumentative or they're angry about answering it because they're in a state where they don't want to, they're in a state of denial where they don't want to address the issue that's at hand. And the problem is not with you asking the question, it's with the other person not wanting to deal with having to look at themselves, self-reflect, and look at what the possible answer is and agree with what's going on there. So you want to be careful when you ask questions like that. If it's a touchy subject, then you may want to divert the question because you know the person's going to get angry over it. But we call this a Heisenburg question. So just be aware of that when you're talking to people, and how we're in certain situations, we can see that if I plant a seed of expectation on the person, then that's going to have an effect on the outcome. Another example was where we had there was a company that reorganized their sales team, and they randomly reorganized the sales team. So one sales guy came in and said, "We got all the geniuses and we got all the super salespeople in our office. We're going to call ourselves the A team, and we're going to outperform everyone else because we got all the top salespeople." Well, at the end of the year, that group outperformed everyone else, even though they were randomly distributed in the company. And they outperformed everyone else. Everyone else in the company started calling them the A team because they were doing so well. And there was a couple of offices where they felt, "Gee, I got the shaft here, and I got all of the bad people the bad salespeople in the company." Even though everyone was random, there was no good or bad group put aside. And as a result, his group performed the worst in the company. So the fact that you know how an outcome is going to happen will affect the experiment, so to speak, that's going on. So if you have, especially if you have children that you're dealing with, always think about, gee, they're geniuses, they're doing well, they're going to do good, and they will perform better in the long run. So be aware of asking Heisenburg questions in getting argumentative responses back, and be aware that if you change your thoughts to be more positive and to be more directed in the situation that you're looking at, you're going to have an effect on the interaction that you have with those people. So go ahead and be the observer who changes the experiment by thinking positive and more productive.